Hello everyone and welcome to the Fried Eggplant channel where we read stuff and react to it. For this video we will delve into r/NuclearRevenge and look at some of the very best and extreme ways people have sought revenge. If you like this content, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on what you think. Without further ado, let us begin. The first story is from Odin the American. My crazy antisocial elderly aunt lives in the mountains of West Virginia. My aunt is a mean, bitter old woman who was suspected of shooting and killing her ex-husband, but the cops could never pin it on her. Years ago, she bought a small home on some land that borders the land of another family in a small, narrow, isolated forest mountain valley. The other family had been living there for a long time and they just wanted to be left alone, just like most people who choose to live in a remote mountain location in West Virginia. My aunt bought chickens and started to let them run around unfenced on her property, and the neighbors' dogs were very interested in those chickens. The chickens would roam around and go over onto the neighbor's property. One day, without warning, she killed her neighbor's dogs for killing one of her chickens. Only one of the dogs was killed on her property, but the other one was shot dead in the neighbor's front yard. The neighbors had small kids, and they loved those dogs. My aunt walked over with a shotgun and told the neighbors that they had better never get another chicken killing dogs again, or else she would kill them too. The neighbors didn't take too kindly to her killing their dogs, and her actions with the shotgun, waving it around and threatening them, was over the top. But they didn't call the cops, knowing that my crazy aunt, who had a reputation for being violent, was unlikely to be arrested, and if she was arrested, she would just quickly be released from jail and be back. So, a couple of weeks later, when my aunt went to town, her home's back window was broken and a bottle of burning oil and gas was thrown into her home. By the time the fire department finally arrived, the home was a complete loss, and every dog and possibly ex-husband killing shotgun and firearm my aunt owned, along with all her other worldly possessions, were incinerated. The home was a total loss, along with the chicken coop. The neighbors didn't see anything, and the sheriff's department couldn't prove anything. My aunt had a long list of enemies. She didn't work and so was too poor and lazy to have homeowner insurance, so she had to move, and her son eventually bought her a cheap rundown trailer in town. Those of us who knew my aunt figured she got what she deserved. Moral of the story, don't screw with a mountain man's dog. Thinking about this story, there is one reply that caught my attention, and I've been thinking about this. This one reply says, "People are not going to like this, but in the state where I am from, it is perfectly legal to shoot dogs that are attacking livestock. For your aunt to shoot the dog in their front yard, though, she totally deserved what she got. Also, she should not have let her chickens roam like that. Eventually, something else would have got them in the mountains." This gives me, John Wick vibes. Kill my dog and I'll do something worse. But then again, I understand the feeling of wanting to kill the dog that killed your chickens. I think that much is justifiable. Anything else after that was very unnecessary, and yes, the aunt got what she deserved. However, I don't feel this is nuclear enough, so for a nuclear score, I'd give it around 3 out of 5 nuclear score. And yes, my nuclear standards are very high. Let's see if this next story gives us something more nuclear. This next story is from Maze Valve. "Hi Reddit, I've got one gem of a story that my grandfather told me about his hometown after he came home from World War II. It has to do with a tree farmer, a corrupt mayor, and over 20 homes getting bulldozed. Enjoy!" At the end of World War II, thousands of troops were heading home, starting new families, and wanted to move out of the city. There was a major housing boom all around the country. People couldn't move out of the cities fast enough, and developers could not build homes fast enough. There was a ton of money to be made in the construction business, which led to some underhanded building practices. One such practice was starting construction before the land acquisition was finalized. Enter my grandfather, G. After serving as a pilot during the war, he came home to a very different town. When my grandfather went off to fight in 1942, the town that he described leaving was tired and worn down. But to his amazement, the town he saw stepping off the train in 1948 was anything but. Newly paved roads, a traffic light, and new homes. New homes that just went on and on. He actually got lost on his way back to the family farm due to the new main town road being rerouted while he was away. But what took him by surprise the most was the new development being built on his childhood friend John's tree farm. This was surprising to him, mainly because he knew how much the farm meant to John and his family. The farm went back at least 2 generations, but my grandfather just guessed that the developer made John's family an offer too good to refuse. However, that thought was shut down later that evening during his welcome home dinner back home. It was my great-grandmother who tipped him off that something was off. He couldn't recall exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of, "Oh, I just wish John was still alive to be here." My grandfather nearly choked, not because of the news, but because John was not dead. He was still in Hawaii. My grandfather had gotten a postcard from him 4 days before. Turns out, while John was off in the Navy fighting in the Pacific Theater, John's dad had suffered a stroke and passed away, and his mother passed away less than a week later from a broken heart. More than likely, John was never informed of their passing, and now 20 plus homes were being built on their land. My grandfather about ran out of the house, jumped in his father's Model T, and raced down into town to send one bombshell of a telegraph to John in Hawaii. "John, your folks passed. Farm now being built on. Come quick." My grandfather never got a response back. He figures that John must have fainted from shock, then jumped up and ran to the Navy base to get on the first boat home, because he was back home in less than 4 days, and he was mad. According to my grandfather, when he burst through the doors of the mayor's office, everyone in the room looked like they were about to drop dead. The poor desk clerk was fumbling over his words, trying to talk to John. Then the mayor came out of his office to see what all the commotion was about, and as soon as he saw John, he went white as a sheet, then ran back into his office and locked the door. Getting nowhere at the mayor's office, John went into the next town over and hired a lawyer. What followed was a 7-year court case that ended in the mayor being sentenced to 8 years in jail and the developer going bankrupt. Turns out that after John's parents passed away, John wasn't able to be contacted for some reason and was just assumed dead. So when an out-of-state developer wanted to build homes in the area, the mayor just permitted them to start building on John's farm for a hefty kickback. Of course. Also, because of John's lawsuit, the developer couldn't finish the pre-sold homes, which ended up in more lawsuits. In the end, the mayor and the developer and the town ended up having to pay John close to $45,000 in total, which is over $752,000 today. And then the farm had to be returned to its prior condition. To say John was happy would be a vast understatement. Today, John's tree farm is a nature reserve, and the story of the corrupted mayor is all but forgotten except for by a few locals. John passed away in 1999. My grandfather has been back to his hometown a few times to visit his grave and to check on the old tree farm. Yes, it is a very good story of revenge. I really love it when corrupt and irresponsible public officials get what they deserve. However, I don't think this is nuclear enough. Sure, the aftermath was indeed nuclear, but the fact that it took a very long time to get that said justice, think of it, 7 years for a court case. I think it was too delayed, and that mayor had 7 years of freedom, that it takes away some points. For me, it's also a 3 out of 5 nuclear score. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you'd like more future content, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on what you think. I'll see you in the next video.